Is this the 11th? 13th. Okay. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy December 13th, and welcome to your Horror Advent Calendar. If you've missed any of the 12 previous Horror Advent installments, you can check them out in the playlist that's on the screen somewhere. But let's move right along for day 13. Lucky 13! Please open. Didn't open. I'm so sorry to Elizabeth Moss's face. That's right, today's pick is The Invisible Man, which came out in theaters earlier this year, if you remember those. It was directed by Leigh Whannell, who you might recognize from the Saw franchise, and I unfortunately did not get to see it in movie theaters. I remember I had a grand plan of going to the movie theater one day after work and watching it, but then work didn't happen anymore and movie theaters didn't happen anymore. So this was my first movie I premium video on demand rented, so that was kind of a fun special experience, although this one would have been so fun to see in movie theaters. But I'm already getting too far ahead of myself, so let's check in with Letterboxd and see what the summary of this movie is. What you can't see can hurt you. When Cecilia's abusive ex takes his own life and leaves her his fortune, she suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of coincidences turns lethal, Cecilia works to prove that she is being hunted by someone nobody can see. It is based on the H.G. Wells novel of the same name, which was published in 1897. There's also a film adaptation made in 1933, cementing the Invisible Man as one of the Universal monsters. And you may remember Universal started embarking on this revamp of all the classic horror movie monsters. You may remember The Mummy had some lesser success than The Invisible Man did. But all part of that same project. And I remember, at least, The Invisible Man, when it came out, getting incredible reviews. People were obsessed with it. And you'll see on Letterboxd, the average rating is 3.6 out of 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars. I was really excited about this movie. And you can see a lot of my friends on Letterboxd have seen this movie. It seems like most of them like it. Some of them not so much, but that's just life for you. That's showbiz, baby. But I'm already rearing to go about things I like about this movie because there are a lot of them. I think it's a very well done movie. Like I said before, this was the first movie I watched as a premium home release. And so because of that, I have very fond associations with it because it just made something feel really special in a really crappy time. Beyond that, I think it's a really fantastic update to the original story. If you've seen the original movie, it's much more about the Invisible Man himself and terrorizing this town and whatnot. But this one obviously is centered much more around the Invisible Man's wife, which I think is a really interesting take. A new side of a story we already know. And while we are talking about the wife, Elizabeth Moss as Cecilia is just incredible. She is so good at what she does. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it is Jack Nicholson in The Shining levels of intensity that she does in this movie, and it's just wonderful. I think Elizabeth Moss should do horror movies forever. She's so good. Also, I have to talk about how amazing the opening scene is. It whoops so much ass. There's just such specificity to that opening scene with hardly any dialogue, I think, at all. But just based on Elizabeth's facial acting, we know exactly what's going on. We know exactly what the situation is, exactly what the stakes are, and the stakes are very high. At the risk of making too many comparisons, it feels a lot like I feel when I watch the opening scene to Scream. It's just a perfectly condensed snapshot of horror. And it's very scary. We are so scared for her in that opening scene.
Are you okay?
Which brings me to another thing I love about this movie, which is how scary it is. This movie is scary. I screamed out loud alone in my studio apartment. I think of, in particular, there's one incredible scare involving a paint can. I'm pretty sure everyone watching this has seen this movie already, so you know what I'm talking about. I would love to talk about that jump scare for hours. It is so well done. And beyond that, for the most part, I find the characters really believable. I really like the friend she stays with for a period of time and his daughter. I think they're really fleshed out, real feeling characters, and their relationships feel so genuine, and you really care about these people. Now, in terms of things I don't like about this movie, there really aren't that many things. I will say some, not a lot, just some of the dialogue feels kind of clunky to me. If you have seen this movie, there's this piece of dialogue Elisabeth Moss has where she's calling someone a jellyfish version of someone, which is a metaphor I understand. I understand what they're saying, but it just sounds goofy.
You're just the jellyfish version of him.
But the thing is, like, if you look at that dialogue on the page, the jellyfish version of someone, you look at it and you're like, huh? But Elisabeth Moss is such a good actor. When she says it, it makes sense. So it works. And then, here we go. Controversial opinion incoming. But the only other thing I didn't really like was the ending of this movie. I know, but what can I say? I just found it a bit contrived, or like a bit too twisty-turny. I'm not gonna give anything away in case anyone hasn't seen it, but it just didn't do it for me. Sorry. But like I said, only two very minor complaints about a movie I think is incredibly good. And perhaps you're sitting there scratching your head saying, well, how is this a Christmas movie? Why is this on the Advent calendar? And let me tell you, there's a Christmas tree in the movie. Merry Christmas! But yeah, I will say this is probably one of the least festive movies on this list, but I associate it with Christmas, and therefore, it's a Christmas movie. Once again, I'm so sorry to Elisabeth Moss for ripping her face in half. Hasn't she been through enough? If you haven't seen this movie, I hope you watch it. I'm pretty positive you'll enjoy it. Let me know if you do, let me know if you don't, and until next time, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I will see you tomorrow.